Are you really in touch with your emotions? Let's talk about the difference between regulating and suppressing emotions. What's up, y'all? My name is Elia. I'm a mindset coach. I talk candidly about my journey, as well as share tips to encourage growth and healing and uplift anyone who may struggle with feeling seen. So, emotions are fickle, they do whatever they feel like doing. We can't control when they show up, how they show up, or even what intensity they show up with. What we can control, though, is how we respond to those emotions and how we navigate the information that they're trying to give us. And that's where the importance of regulating comes in. Now, regulating, like anything else in life, it can get pretty layered and pretty complex. There are healthy ways to regulate, there are not so healthy ways to regulate. But simply put, regulating is managing your emotions and your responses to those emotions, ideally in a constructive and healthy way. Again, there are a lot of ways to actually regulate. And some of the more common things you may see, or more common ways to regulate, are reframing or reappraisal, where you change your perspective on a situation. You might change your environment or variables around you, so that way you can have a different relationship with the things that trigger certain emotions. Or you may make other lifestyle changes, so that way you can just have a different perspective or outlook on life in general. Whatever that looks like, again, there are a lot of ways to actually practice it. And you may preemptively regulate, where if you know you're going to go into a high stress situation, maybe it's a high stress meeting or something of that sort, you can start practicing regulating techniques to keep yourself in an emotional space that you find constructive and healthy. Or maybe something just happens out the blue and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I got to deal with this, and you have to responsively regulate your emotions. Again, the point is, it can look a lot of ways. But the importance of regulating your emotions in healthy ways is that it allows you to actually engage with your emotions in a way that allows you to fully listen to yourself and honor yourself. And that can allow you to access more joy. It can allow you a higher quality of life. It can allow you a better relationship between your mind and your body, because they're going to try to tell you different things or move in different ways at points. But by learning to regulate in a healthy way, you can kind of keep them in sync and overall just have a more positive outlook on life. Now, the other end of regulating, again, you can do this in the healthy and unhealthy ways, is suppressing your emotions. Suppression, put simply, is just refusing to acknowledge your emotions, or your negative emotions specifically, and just kind of pushing them to the side. It's a pretty common coping strategy for a lot of folks dealing with overwhelming or negative or challenging emotions or situations. But here's the thing, emotions don't go away just because we refuse to feel or acknowledge them. In fact, what happens is they compound. It all kind of gets stacked on top of each other, and that can really negatively impact you if you don't stop and deal with those emotions. And that can lead to outright repressing those emotions, where you just completely bury them and don't even or can't even access them. And that may lead to coping strategies that are unhealthy to distract you from your emotions. Maybe over watching TV, or binge eating, or dabbling in substances that aren't good for you, or risky relationships, or just taking on too much work to try to distract from actually feeling those emotions. And again, if left unchecked, or if you don't deal with this stuff, eventually you can find yourself in a space of overwhelm, complete overwhelm, disassociation, depression, anxiety. You might have yourself a breakdown. You can even have health issues as a result of not dealing with this. So it's really important to find healthy ways to regulate and actually allow yourself to fully feel your emotions without letting them control your life or dictate every move. And as always, my goal here is to humanize this stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about what this has looked like for me at points in my life, in hopes that it helps somebody out there not feel alone. So for me, a long-term struggle of mine has been depression. And I've come a long way and really learned how to work with my brain several decades in. We good. Wasn't always the case though. Um, Maybe about 10 years ago, I was in a space in my life where I was just really unhappy. I had a lot going on in my personal life and work life, and everything just felt really overwhelming. It was a lot of negativity in my personal life, and I was having a hard time really kind of working through that and still showing up as the best version of myself. And I didn't have a safe emotional space in most of my intimate relationships. I actually realized that that hadn't been modeled for me. It's not something that I really had the way I needed at that point anywhere, for the most part anyway. Let me not make a blanket statement, but for the most part, I didn't have that. So I learned through that that expressing my needs wasn't safe. Expressing my emotions wasn't safe. So at some point, I just stopped doing that. And although I was just completely unhappy, I was not carving out safe outlets for myself to really honor and work through those negative feelings that were really impacting my overall quality of life. And I had this on paper great corporate job. I was in a relationship. I had physical or tangible belongings and all that, but I was still emotionally really struggling and didn't know what to do with that and wasn't actively working through some of those emotions. And it all came crumbling down. And I wound up having a complete nervous breakdown where I had to leave my job at the time. And that really changed the course of my life. It sucked at the time, don't get me wrong, and I'm still grateful for the experience because it highlighted the importance of really getting better in tune with my emotions. And that allowed me to actually really start to do that work in ways that at that time I didn't know how to or just simply wasn't doing. So, with that said, as always, I want to share some tips that have helped me in hopes that they'll help you on your journey. First, it's important to focus on what you can control. Again, you can't control your emotions, you can't control when they show up or even how they show up. But once they're there, there's almost always something that is still within your control. And I like to look at that as looking for opportunities rather than getting just overwhelmed and bogged down in the emotion, which, don't get me wrong, some emotions are really heavy and it's not at all easy to just keep it trucking. But rather than just getting stuck in that, it's important to still look around, look at your life, look at your immediate situation to whatever level you have to in that moment, and identify things that are still within your control and that you can still actually impact through your immediate decisions. Secondly, I think it's really important to view feelings, that's hard to say, view feelings as information and not burdens, especially negative feelings, because again, they're not fun. We don't want to deal with them. But even negative feelings are information, and information is valuable. So those negative feelings are trying to tell you something. And by viewing them as a potential constructive outlet or constructive tool, that allows you to have a different relationship with those negative feelings instead of just disliking them, which, I mean, who likes grief, who likes sorrow, who likes sadness, who likes any of that? But it's still valuable and they're still trying to tell you something. Third, it's important to practice somatic exercises. And the importance of somatic exercises is that they keep you feeling and listening to your body. Again, earlier I mentioned that through suppression, you can kind of disconnect the mind body connection. You can completely sever that tie after a while. Somatic exercises teach you or encourage you to actively feel. And that's important because that allows you to learn cues that your body may give you when your emotions are on the move. And there are quite a few different types of somatic exercises. Some examples are deep breathing exercises, yoga, walking meditations. I don't know, whatever works for you. Just, I recommend you do it. And then lastly, journaling is really important. Sometimes, again, we don't have a safe space in intimate relationships. Sometimes we may not have people that we really feel safe talking to about our more challenging emotions. And a great way to still get some of that out and actually process it and give it space to exist and honor it is through journaling. That's not going to solve the problems, but it's a step in actually giving them space to exist outside of yourself as opposed to just brushing them aside inside of yourself. So I hope those tips do help you on your journey. And as always, I want to leave you with one reflective question. And today's question is, what would it take to build a healthier relationship with your emotions? Think about it.